we are with another excerpt of the Scouser and the Scot.
Today we have an old friend of mine, Dave Ritchie from Wildfire. How are you doing, buddy? How are you keeping?
I'm okay, thank you. I'm keeping relatively well, all things considered. Yeah. I've not been out of the house much over the past few months, but no, I'm in good health, and my family's in good health, which is very important to me. And as are all my friends and people I know in the business, we're all struggling, I think, without the music. But in terms of our general health, we're doing all right. So that's a good thing.
That's a great start, mate, and that's really positive note to hear from yourself as well. Just for the audience, there is 2 Scots on here and a Scouser, so subtitles will be available if you click down below. So let's get started with some of the questions. Dave, can you give us a bit of an insight into your background? What triggered you? What interested you in music first, and what got you hooked?
Funnily enough, I'm working on a radio show on a different project at the moment, but I was born in the 60s, as you can probably tell. So I grew up through the 70s, really, and that for me was a kind of golden era of music. I grew up really when I was even sort of 8, 9, 10, listening to glam rock bands, and that includes sort of Shawady Waddy and Mud and all that kind of stuff. But that was the kind of music I listened to. And my family were really into music. My mum was a pianist. My dad always played records in the house. So, and when we were in the car, there was always music playing. So music, I think back in the 70s was a big part of life, because let's be honest, we had, I think, 2 TV channels back then, like BBC One and STV or whatever it was. And so music was really always around me when I was young. So I kind of grew up listening to the glam stuff. And my dad had a huge LP collection which covered all sorts, but in amongst it, I found an album called Deep Purple in Rock, which was completely different for me then. It was a new experience, which I used to play quite a lot, and it was quite scratchy. My older brother, he was into sort of Supertramp, Bowie, bit of T-Rex, that kind of thing. So again, music was just a big part of my life. And it's never left me. I mean, I got to probably 13, 14, I picked up guitar, as many people in this industry did. You start off by wanting to be a musician, and you played the One Fingered Smoke on the Water and all that kind of thing. I just kind of taught myself. So that's what got me into the music side. It was just a part of my life. I wanted to play it. I sort of self-taught myself. I would never say I was a musician, but I played a guitar, and there's a big difference. When I was about 15, we got a band together. We had various names, a bit embarrassing, and I don't even know why, but the first band we were in was called Frog Morton. I don't know, go figure. But Frog Morton were a kind of a rock band. We wrote our own material. It was dreadful, but we were basically a school rock band. I mean, that's what we were.
Dave, you weren't terrible. You were just before your time.
Well, possibly, yeah. I think we invented 20-minute prog epics before they were we were awful. But it kept us out of mischief. It was something we enjoyed doing. Equipment we had was really awful. I think we used to sing through a guitar amp, actually, with a microphone plugged into a guitar amp and all this kind of stuff. It was really poor. But that was my kind of background. And when I got into music, started playing, and then the band got a bit better. I think I would have been 16, 17. We changed our name to Liar, and we started to get gigs. And there was a kind of a pub club circuit in Scotland. I became the guy that I think took on the job of booking the band. Probably, and sounds really pathetic, but this is Scotland a long time ago. I think I was the only person out of the 4 of us that had a telephone in the house. This is true. So I could phone up venues to book gigs. And I became the kind of booker for the band. And it started off local, but then we started to see gigs all over Scotland. And we built up a bit of a following as that band Liar. And that was really how I kind of started in the business side of things.
What other bands, Dave, in Scotland were around at the time that Liar was? What were your competition like?
We were out supporting bands like Chaser, La Paz, Glasgow, the Smoky Bears, who were from Kilmarnock, I believe, big hairy bunch of guys. Oh, there was so many back then. As I say, Glasgow, I remember Chaser. Um,
We supported them. I supported them at the Heathery Bar in Wishaw.
the Heathery was our sort of place we wanted to play, and we did get there eventually. And we played the Heathery quite a few times on sort of Saturday nights, which was the rock night. Friday, I think, was the punky one. Saturday was the heavy rock one.
Yeah.
And yeah, we played the Heathery a few times.
Dave, was that the one where it was mirrors in the walls, and that when everybody was in, that we used to run down the walls and sweat?
I can't. All I can remember from the Heathery Bar is you couldn't see much because of the amount of weed people were smoking. I don't know if you could put that out there, but that was the kind of thing it was. Very heavy. I mean, we saw loads of bands there. I saw Grand Slam with Phil Lynott back in the 80s there. But Saturday night, again, for us living in I live in a village. There's nothing round about me, so we used to. I organised this as well. Now that I think about it, book a minibus. 10 lads went into it, all looking like bikers. None of us had a bike. And off we went to the Heathery Bar to watch rock music. And that was just, again, part of my whole sort of growing up and being into music. So it's always been part of what I did and do. And then the band kind of split and I kind of went out of music for a wee while. They then came back as a new name. The band were called The Answer, and they asked me to manage them. So I kind of get into management. And again, they were probably coming back to me because they knew I could pick up the phone and speak to people and get gigs and book things. And I managed to get them onto Tea in the Park and stuff back in the 90s. And that got me another band to manage called the Honeyflies in Glasgow, who I worked with for a couple of years. And then I kind of came away from music again because my son was born and family life took over and hit in the head. That was it for a long time.
Ah, that's cool. So basically, we're booking because you're the only one that. It's funny how you get to where you get to, isn't it? So you were the only one of your band at the phone, so you had to do all the phone calls. They then ended up kind of managing them and getting gigs for them. So
yes.
How did you say? So what else have you done within about outside of the festival? What other things have you been involved in the business side of it, Dave?
Musically, I mean, musically, that was really all. I was in the band. I took the band to a certain place. Got involved in the management side, got them booking, got them some recording work and some good production work in studios in Glasgow. Tried to get them a better management deal, to be honest, without being. I wasn't being selfish about it. I knew I could only take the band so far. And I started dealing with, at that time, it was the people that managed Gun, the Glasgow band.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to offload, if you like, the Answer onto the Gun management. And again, I'm quite happy to put it out there. It's true and it's historical. They wanted to take part of the band in as much as I think they wanted the singer and the guitarist, but they didn't want the other guitarist and the drummer. And that wasn't going to work for the guys. It was like, this is us and you take it or leave it. So they had an opportunity, but basically the management wanted to take just the elements of the band and do something else with them. So as I say, I did that with Liar, who became The Answer. And then I did it with a band called the Honeyflies. That was my only involvement in terms of playing and management and sort of the booking side of stuff. That was it.
Sure.
In my day job, I mean, I organise things, and believe it or not, separate to all that, shows you how life's weird. I used to keep canaries. Now, there you go. Again, because I live in a little mining town, and I grew up, I know, real heavy stuff, this canaries. And I organised a big bird show in Glasgow, which we held in the SECC and attracted about 3,000 or 4,000 people. And I just put all that together again because it's something, even though I say it myself, I can organise things. If I put my mind to something, I can organise it and I can make it happen if I'm interested. I sometimes lose interest. I did with the birds and I moved on. Well, the canaries, that is. And I moved on and I did the bird show and that was that. But that was me just, I suppose, being able to organise time and put infrastructure things into place and organise people to be in the right places at the right time. And that, I suppose, was the background which gave me the experience when I got to think about the festival. I had something behind me that would help me to pull things together, basically.
So what made you decide, I'm going to put my own music festival on? Because you've been doing it for a while, like you've had a few festivals under your remit.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, it was Les Fest where I first met you. I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. On the 12th day.
Oh. So that would have
Showing
been
my age now. Yeah. So,
so that would have been in Chris Ford then. Yeah, I mean, this is a kind of well documented story for me because it's true. I mean, I was really into music, and I say I wasn't a great musician, but that's just the way it is. I accept that. But when my son was born back in '94, he grew up, and like a lot of his generation, was into guitar player on the PlayStation, Xbox, whatever it was, one of those games for you, the plastic guitar. And I bought him a real guitar, and he picked it up extremely quickly. So he became, by the time he was 12, a far better musician than I had ever been at the peak of my powers. And he went on from strength to strength. So I knew he was into music. And although I hadn't taken him to many gigs and things, Sonosphere turned up in 2009, possibly. And I think Avenged Sevenfold were playing and Bullet and bands like that. And that was very much his type of thing. He was a young kind of metal guy. So I took him to the festival. He would be 14, 15 at this point in time. And we kind of really, although he was my son, we kind of bonded as pals. I know it sounds a bit cliched, but we became more pally, if you like, than father and son, because we had a joint mutual appreciation of kind of heavy metal and rock and that kind of thing. So that just became something. It was an annual pilgrimage. We started going to Sonosphere. And when they, I think, announced, well, I remember this very clearly, when they announced on 2012, or in 2012, I think it was the 29th of March, that they were cancelling that year's event, my son was distraught because it was a big part of his life by this point in time. And I would take him and a few of his friends. So he was really upset, and me being me said, "I'll start a festival, son. Don't you worry." And that's the truth. You know, I keep saying it, I had a couple of glasses of wine that night, probably too many glasses of wine. And I said, "Don't you worry, I'll start a festival." And the next day, I registered the domain name Les Fest, which was the Lismahago Music Festival. I knew what I was doing. Les Fest was a bit controversial, but it got a bit of attention. And 90 days later, I stuck the first festival on. It was as simple as that. And that was the one at Chris Ford. We did two at Chris Ford in 2012 and 2013. So that's how I started it. But the other angle to this, again, from my background previously playing and doing basic management, was that I could see my son was a good, talented musician. And I knew that for him to get on potentially as he grew older, you need connections. You need people that can put you in the right direction. And by starting the festival, that hooked me up with some agents, some management companies, just different people that I thought might be useful to him as he gets older. As it's worked out, I mean, I've upset so many people in the business, probably wouldn't do him any good at all. But it would maybe help connect him with people if that's the route he wanted to go down. That was all part of my thought process, if you like, back in the sort of early 2012, 13. That's where I was going with it. That's how it started.
So can we look now at because I'm hoping there's people going to be watching this that may just do that very same thing that you did, Dave, back in the day, which was have this mad idea to put on a festival. So can you talk us through the initial processes of setting up a festival? You know, what are the things you have to consider? What are the things you need to sort out?
Yeah, well, so the first one, I needed a venue. That's obviously, you obviously have to have a starting point. Because I wanted to hold it in the village, we have a local sort of community hall, community centre type place that I thought, that's okay. They have functions on there. They can have a bar. There's a little bit of staging in the place. So I had the name. I had a potential date. I thought we'd do it kind of end of school holidays in Scotland, which was the last weekend in June. I wanted to make it a family thing because my kid, even at that age, you know, he couldn't go into a licensed premises, and I wasn't sure how the council would be. So I contacted the council, explained what I wanted to do. It was going to be a Saturday, basically a Saturday show, a one-day Saturday event. That was the plan. The council made me jump through hoops, and it was really, really awkward to work with them, and that's the truth. Till I got to the stage, I think I had about 6-7 weeks to go, and I pulled that venue. It just wasn't going to work, and I had to find a new place, which turned out to be the venue we used for 2 years in Chris Ford. So the first thing I had to do was secure the venue. I then needed a sound system, but again, I knew people in the industry through people that worked at Ivory Blacks and King Tuts and these places that were kind of freelance. So I spoke to them, about hiring in the equipment. And it sounds simple. I've got a venue, get a PA system, plug it in, and away you go. But it's nothing like that. You then realise you need camping facilities if people are coming to stay. You need toilets. You need backup power if the power doesn't work. And the venue we used was partly a kind of kids play park type place and a wedding venue. And 6 sockets along the back of a wedding venue doesn't work for a 10k rig and all the lights and everything else that goes along with it. So you've got to bring in ancillary power, and it grows and grows and grows and grows. And I think the first year it was all right. I mean, we had everything in place. They had a stage, but the stage wasn't big enough, so I had to go and find staging. And that was just a case of going out shopping. You know, you just go online, look up companies, speak to them and see what deals I could get. And when I started off, I had a sort of keen sense of wanting to build something and be loyal to people. But I have found, with there's a lot of exceptions, but a lot of people I dealt with in the early days, it was just about as quick as they could get some money from you, give you the gear, and they weren't really interested in developing a long-term relationship. That's changed as I've got to the stage I'm at now. But back then, it was just a case of you went shopping, you got what you could get for the money you had, and you put the event on. So the first one, that's what I did. But there are lots of things so you have to consider. So it's sound, it's lighting, it's actually people as well. You need people to look after things. You know, I can't run about and do it all myself, much as I tried initially. But you can't. It just burns you out. It takes too much out of you. So you need to be surrounded with a good key core of people that you can trust, and they can muck in and will put in the hours to help, because they're very, very long events now, even just the 3 days. You know, but it doesn't start on the Friday. It starts for me on the Wednesday or the Thursday, and it still continues into the Monday, Tuesday the following week. So a 3-day event now for me is basically a week's work, and it's full on. You know, we don't, but we drink a lot. It's not just we drink and eat a lot, and we have a good time, but we don't sleep much, so it takes a lot out of you. I'm going off at tangents here, but that's just
to be perfectly honest, Dave, I think it sort of hits the point, like, you know, how much effort is required to put on one of these festivals. And if anyone is watching this, it's not just let's ring up a venue, put it on, and forget about everything else. There's a number of other things that I know you haven't touched on at the moment, like your costs, your licensing, and stuff like that, which, as you know, councils can be a joy to work with.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so it's like we can most probably go into that a bit later on.
Yeah.
Well, can you talk us through, like, you know, how it's developed from your first festival to a Wildfire this year?
Yeah.
With fingers crossed.
Well, we'll see. We'll have something on this year. I mean, that's something I still plan to do. I can't promise it will be in June right now, but I'll maybe touch on that later on as well today. The first year was fine. I mean, it went okay at the place, and I was happy with it. And it was, I think we only had 150, 200 people if we were lucky, but it was fine. It was a learning process. The bands that came along, some were actually bigger and better than I thought in terms of the names we attracted. And then you've also got to, I'm just thinking back, actually, these people need accommodation, some of them that are travelling up from London or wherever, or you know, things grow and develop. So we did a year at Crisford, it was fine. I did a second year at Crisford, and it was okay too. But the person that owned the venue also had the bar. And what I really kind of found was I'm selling tickets. That was really my main revenue income or income stream was through ticket sales. So I was putting in a lot of work, selling the tickets, using the money to pay the bands, going home, exhausted. And the only person that made any money was the guy that had the venue and the bar. And I thought, this is a bit stupid. And it was never about money for me. But at the same time, I was spending a lot of money to put the festival on and get absolutely nothing back other than an exhausting, tiring weekend. And I've said many times, I rarely saw any of the bands. So I could book a band that I really want to see. I never saw them because I was always doing other things, which was frustrating. So after 2 years, I thought the way to make this financially viable is to find a venue where we can control more elements of it, which primarily is the alcohol sales. And that's why I looked for a new place to go. So in 2014, we moved to a place called Whiston Lodge, which was a big country estate. old run down. It's a kind of community centre that works with vulnerable children and such like, but it shuts during the summer and they need ways of making money as well. So me coming along and hiring the venue and using their kitchen facilities, which meant they could make money from food, but we could run the bar, gave me an opportunity to build a bigger event. And when we took it up there, we took again a punt and went quite big into it. We had 2 good sized marquees, 2 good stages, 2 good sound systems. There was a 3rd stage, which was acoustic to other part of the estate. There was loads of room for camping. It was actually about 56 acres, I think, the place. There were accommodation for 40 odd people in the house itself, the lodge. So that covered a lot of bases in terms of accommodation, places for catering, to run the bar, the field, the camping. It was all in one. It just gave me one complete venue. But it was a different prospect moving it there.
That's cool. So you then, when was it that you actually moved to One Look Head?
Well, if the full story, I'll give you the full story because I'm here to talk about the way the business works. We moved up to Whiston 2014. It was fine. 2015 was better. 2016 was better again. And at this point, I had changed the bar supplier to a new person. I won't name them, but they provided a better range of beers and spirits, and we had an agreement. We were bringing in a few other caterers. We were bringing in people selling patches, badges, clothes. So we actually stalls round about the place, and it started to really look like a festival. So we got to 2017, and it was the best event I had ever run, quite frankly. About 800 or 900 people. It was jam-packed every night in the marquees. We had massive wagons and glorious, really good lineup of bands. A really good, fun, family-friendly, which I've always stressed is something we do, family-friendly event. The weather was good, the setting was good. And because I've been doing it for a few years, the team of people round about me, it ran like clockwork, and I really enjoyed it. It was the first one I properly enjoyed, and I saw a lot of the bands I wanted to see. So it was a great event for me. However, and I've made no bones about this, the people that ran the bar, who were meant to give me X number of pounds, did a runner. Simple as that. And left me with a huge debt. Because that's how I ran the business model. It was a case of you pay the bands, you get the tickets, you get the bar money, and that pays all your debts at the end of the day, whether it's for the staging, anything at all. So we had a huge debt at the end of 2017. And again, I'm being honest, what I then did to try and cover those debts was took the 2018 ticket money as it came in and paid off the debts, paid them down, get them to disappear, which obviously meant when I get into 2018, I was coming from a position of a deficit, and it was going to be really difficult to put it on. And I still had bands and get into the spring of 2018 that I hadn't paid. I'd spoken to them, they knew the situation, and I said I would deal with it. And I borrowed money, and my wife borrowed money. We maxed out lots of cards. And people have no idea the money that's involved in this. I'm talking tens of thousands of pounds. And we borrowed that money and eventually paid every single person off. But to this day, I know there are people still out there saying I didn't pay them, or I didn't do this, I didn't do that. It's not true. But I accept it. People put the boot in. I don't know why, but people that I thought better than they were really stuck the boot in. And it is what it is. So I didn't do an event in 2018. We scrapped it. There was a big boo-ha-ha, and there's nothing else I could do. But I didn't want to kill it off. And I thought, I want to start again, but I need to start on a different basis and a different footing. I've cleared all the debts. I need to downsize it and go back to what it originally was, which was very much a grassroots thing. So rather than chasing some bigger names and paying 2 or 3 grand for bands to come and play for an hour, I made it much more grassroots, back to this original sort of style, if you like. So One Lock Head will only ever hold 350 capacity, an absolute maximum. And the first year I did, 2019, I limited it to 200 ticket sales just to see how it would fit into the place, because it's a small, tiny village, a small community. And I also wanted to see how that was received within the community, because although we got licensed and the council were fine and the police were fine, there was a bit of apprehension because people don't know. They're thinking, 200 or 300 hairy rockers are descending on a little town, and they weren't sure how it was going to go. But we were well received. It went really well. Again, it ran well because we've got that previous experience of running events, so the whole thing ran like clockwork. It was a good, successful event. Again, I didn't make any money, but I wasn't bothered about that one. I got out it in one piece. And I also made a point in 2019 of saying to all the bands to be absolutely upfront about it. Tell me how much you need to be paid. And a week before the event, give me your details and I'll transfer you the money. So everybody was paid in advance of the event. One or two weren't because they said pay me cash on the day or whatever. And one or two of the bigger bands will say, look, 2 weeks after, we'll send you an invoice. But the vast majority, I tried to do everything upfront, in hand, so that I wasn't running about worrying about how I'm going to pay for things, if you like. And that's why it moved to Warlock Head. Downsize it, make it viable, make it easy to run, make it less stressful, and it was fine. It went like clockwork. The people in the place were happy. The venue owners were delighted because they've never had a weekend like it. And they cut me a bit of slack with the bar and did some hospitality for some of the bands and stuff. So yeah, for me now it just sits nicely. It's not big. I don't really care. My days of trying to build a 2,000-3,000 type festival are over for the moment. I'm happy with 300 people for a weekend, all for the same reason, all getting on and all enjoying the music. And that's, I think, where I'm going to stick. It's just, I now say to agents and managers, picture a good sized club venue, but everybody camps. That's what it is now. So if you're doing a tour and you want to play to a 200 cap audience or whatever, this is where you want to go in the summer. That's my way of looking at it.
So it's
I actually like it. I think it's a great idea, Dave, to be perfectly honest. And it highlights highs and lows you've experienced that people don't understand what goes on behind the scenes within a festival. And I think, John, you most probably know this as well. Like, you know what I mean? The amount of effort it takes to put on one of these festivals and the stress that goes through your head. And this is even before you even thought, are we going to get people to this event? So
that's always another thing. It's a standard sort of stock thing now in the music business, especially running bigger events like that. Ticket sales, and you can push as much as you like to say buy your ticket early, but people don't. And to a degree, I do that as well. I mean, if a gig turns up in Glasgow or Edinburgh next whenever, June or July, I'll probably turn up on the right pay at the door. But a bigger event like the kind of festival thing, or even a one-day event with maybe 10 bands or something like that on, the people running it ideally want that money in the bank a few weeks before it. It just gives them peace of mind. I always managed to cover everything until I was let down by the people running the bar. And when that left a hole in my finances, it just becomes a huge issue. And you could argue then I shouldn't have gone into it without having something behind me. But we don't have the corporate sponsorship or we'll get gear from people, Marshall or Black Star or whoever will give us some kit. But we never get money from people. We don't get direct sponsorship or direct involvement with people lumping big amounts of cash into it. That doesn't work. So it's always been whatever I can put into it myself, my money. I'm also in a position now, again, because I started in 2012, I'm nearly 10 years on in terms of the cycle of events we've had. I'm a bit more financially secure, I suppose. So I could take a bigger risk now, but I don't want to. I'm just happy running what I go back to, as I said earlier, running a club type show in a marquee, in a little village in the middle of nowhere, which gives it a kind of USP, if you like. It's the highest village in Scotland, it's the highest pub in Scotland, that kind of thing. So for a lot of people that want a different weekend away, it's quite a nice thing to have. And I would say actually the majority of people that come to the event come from England. We have a Scottish kind of contingent that come every year and have been since the beginning. But people come from all over the UK for this wee thing, and it's just a small. But it's the friendliness of it. It's a community type event. Everybody knows everybody. They all get together once a year, meet each other, and it's a party. I mean, it's a cliche, but it's just a big party. That's kind of where we are now, and it's fine because it's literally now for me stress free. which is fantastic because people have no idea what I went through 17, 18. You know,
Yeah.
terrible.
That's when you find, Dave, it's like you say, the key point you said there was you could take a risk now, but you don't want to. And I think it's one of those things that what you found was that in adversity, there's a lot of people, like you said, willing to kick you while you're down, or don't show patience, and they don't realise you're in a bad place yourself through no fault of your own. So to move on for that, so as people are watching this and thinking they want to put on an all-day festival in a local pub or whatever it wants to be, however grandiose a scheme, what are the kind of things that these people will not think about that if they don't get it right will come back and bite them in the ass? The quirky things, the little quirky things.
There's things you learn. It's like having, I suppose, contingency plans, which sounds sort of simple, but things will go wrong. Inevitably, things go wrong, and it's being able to deal with that. And I can't necessarily say there's a rule book as to what's good and what's bad, but even to last year we had a generator that was coming up and it broke down. People were bringing the generator to the event, broke down, so we didn't have any power. Which sounds a bit of a nightmare. And it's not that you don't think of these things, it's just, I think it's really easy to say, here's an event, this is what I need, and let's go ahead with it. But nothing, I say, it doesn't always go smoothly. So I think the key things are to have people round about that you trust and rely on, so that if something's wrong, they can literally go away and try and find a solution to that problem, whether it's going to sourcing equipment from somewhere else or borrowing something from somewhere else. There's lots of things. I would also say you need to be very precise, I suppose, in what you've agreed with people. And what I mean by that is, and I'm not going to name names here either, but although it's pretty obvious if you look back at the history of the event, we had a singer who fronted up a very well-known metal band back in the day, and he was coming to play for us. And I arranged it with his agent and did everything above board, and everything was fine, dotted the T's, crossed the I's, till he landed in Glasgow airport, and he didn't have a visa or a work permit to come into the country. Now, I think the reason being, well, I won't go into the reason being, that's just one of these things. Now, he blamed me, I blamed his agent. As I said then at the point in the big debate we had, it's not a problem getting you one, but nobody told me. So it's like you need to almost overthink things. So if depending who you're dealing with, think about what they might need, and if you've got things in place to cover that. Because I would never have thought of getting them a working visa or a work permit, because they're an international artist that tours the world. You'd think on the list of things they want, they would go, and you must get me this, because I booked them flights, I booked them hotels, I booked them airport transfers. So it's not difficult to go and get them that other bit of paperwork, but they never asked me, so I didn't do it. But they assumed that I was going to do it. So just, I think, if you're putting something on, just be very, not cautious, that's not the right word, but just make sure you fully understand what you're agreeing with and what you've agreed to, and then kind of stick to that. That's probably the main thing. And as I say, over and above that, get 2 or 3 people round about you that you trust. For me, that's mainly family, because my 2 brothers get involved now every year, and I can rely on them, and they will go literally anywhere in the country to do something or get something that I need, which is great. But also people that you work with within the event on the day, get 1 or 2 people round about you that can support you and understand you, and also carry you through the slightly, how do I put this, you will dip in every event. You're on adrenaline, and you get to a point where everything just hits you. It's like a wall, and you take a real downer, and it might only last an hour. But something I've also learned, if you're putting an event on, maybe not so much a one day, because I've done one-day events in the Waterloo in Blackpool, for example, and they run, again, like clockwork. That's really simple to do, because it's a venue geared up for putting on that kind of thing. So they can run with it. All I need to do is book the bands and make sure they're in and out. But you need people that can just kind of look after your corner, or whatever the expression is, just kind of hold you together when things go wrong. So you need people you can really rely on. That's it. Yeah,
have your back.
You can rely on. Yeah. So I work very closely with a chap called Scot. Colin runs a YouTube channel, actually, sort of CS Guitars, it's called. I'm not plugging him, but he's a guitar kind of techie guy, and Colin comes along, and Colin is my right hand man over the weekend, and he knows when I'm kind of getting down, or when I'm just stressed out. Sometimes just go take an hour, and that could literally be go for a walk up the hills, go get a drink of water. That's always good. That's all there. Go for a walk and chill for an hour and come back. A lot goes on, and it's mostly up here. It's not physically demanding. It's just trying to keep everything running along in your head. And as I say, One Log Head ran really well, pretty much stress free, which is great. But there's almost so much going on in your head, because I'm still dealing with 60 odd bands over a weekend, and they're all very different. And some have quite big demands, and others are really easy to deal with. That's just par for the course. But you need somebody to as you say, sort of just keep you sane when you need that wee bit of time out. So that's what I would say. Just almost overthink it. Think what could go wrong, and what would I do if it does go wrong. And the people I'm dealing with, what do they expect from me, and can I meet their expectations? That's what I've learned, because quite often in the beginning you wouldn't, and that would cause me an issue. That was more down to egos and things with some of the bands, but you need to understand who you're dealing with and kind of make sure you've covered the bases. That's about the best way I can put it into words.
That's ace.
So obviously we're talking about bands at the moment. How do you go about deciding what bands you're going to book for the festival? Because it's always an interesting one, especially from my point of view. Like, you know what I mean?
Believe it or not, I mean, originally when I started, I knew a few local bands, and that was fine. I booked them and they played, and that was okay. That kind of got me more into the local music scene, so I started going out much more often to the likes of, if you've played up here, the sort of Ivory Blacks, or the Classic Grand in Glasgow, or Audio in Glasgow, or Bannerman's in Edinburgh, the Dreadnought in Bathgate. All these places I was going out a lot of weekends just to see bands. I didn't even need to know much about them. I just went out in the main to see as much live music as I could. That was one way. But the quicker way, if you like, to do that was to go to other festivals. So back in sort of 13, 14, I started going to SOS Festival in Manchester.
Oh, yeah.
I went to Rockmantic down in Carlisle that Raz runs. What else did I go to? I went to the one in Northwich, Rockwich Festival. And that was the way I kind of found bands. That's how I found music. I would just go and see bands perform live. And I'm not sure if I'm jumping the gun here, but basically what I was always looking for was a good live performance, first and foremost, but also kind of how bands dealt with the tech side, when they're setting up and getting on the stage, getting off the stage. These are things I always look at, because I want to see that bands they don't need to be professional, but they need to be efficient, if that's the right word. Having done a bit of tech work, there's nothing worse if you're putting something together on a stage and the lead guitarist is blasting out his Marshall with his best solo right in your ear. When you're trying to move things about on stage, just think, shut up, wait your time till the sound engineer goes, give us a level. So it's just, I'm looking for professionalism in how they deal with the environment and the kind of technical side of it, and then I'm also just looking for a good live performance. That's the main thing for me. And very often in terms of the music, for me, it's about songs. I've always been, and that goes back possibly to the start of our discussion about the Blades and the Sweets and the Rubettes or whatever else it was going to be, the Shawadi Waddies. It was songs. They had good songs. They might not have been very heavy, but they had good songs. And I always grew up listening to good songs. So for me, music and bands is good songs, good level of energy and performance, and how they deal with the whole setup round about them, being professional, coming on the stage, getting off the stage, and doing things on time, because time's really critical when you're running an event. You need to have things running really, really on time, or it becomes a mess. And I've learned that as well over the years, having run 2 stages at once. If one gets out of kilter, then it's dreadful. It's really awful. So that's kind of what I look for. So, and that's where I pick the bands up. The other thing, I mean, I'm wearing this T-shirt. I'm sure you're aware of Guy Bellamy or whatever. I tune into rock shows. I've known Guy for a good number of years. I listen to his Friday rock show every Friday. I probably have done now for 4 or 5 years. I'm sure he won't mind me saying this. He goes on waffles away at times and goes off at tangents, but think because he brings a lot of new music to radio, a lot of bands seek him out. So he then plays those tunes, if you like, and I get to hear new music, and then I can go follow that up. Yeah, I mean, usually around about here, CDs lying everywhere, bands I've been buying. I always try to buy CDs. That one came in today, Dead Blonde Stars. I recommend them, very good band. I've not heard it yet, but I heard some other stuff. That's where I pick it up. Pick it up through now the radio stations. Scotland Rocks Radio as well up here.
Hey, now we're talking. Not that I'm biased, because I always have a DJ.
No, I'll get there. Don't worry. I know the guys at Scotland Rocks well, and you know, we've met up and we've talked about things in the future, possible things for the future. But again, I listen to their sort of radio shows, and I grew up with Tom Russell. I still listen to some stuff that Tom does. But that's where I kind of hear the music through. Dare I say it, call them like more like local rock stations, but they're the ones that don't go all mainstream and play, you know, the Judas Priest, Uriah Heep stuff I've all heard for years and years and years. They bring in new music. I listen to that. If I like it, I'll then go and try and see the bands live as much as I possibly can. And generally, I've tried to say I don't book a band unless I've seen them live. That's impossible now because it doesn't always work. And even more so the past year, because I've not, the last gig I went to was February 2020. So it's almost a year now to the you know, the day that there was the last gig I attended. So I've not seen anybody live for over a year. But that's why going forward, you know, the lineup for the next festival will be pretty much what I'd hoped to have in 2020. So that's or is it, I don't know. Yeah, I'll need to be. I can't see me changing it much because what I had then I was happy with. So that's kind of where I'll build the next event roundabout. But if something,
I think other festivals are doing that, Dave. Look at talking to other festivals, literally everything was frozen in time March last year, and it's just, if it happens this year, they're just going to literally lift it and lay it as it is. So I don't think there's anything different.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, the only difference would be for me, I had a few bands coming over from Europe, just like from Germany and Sweden and stuff, and just smaller bands, and not a huge amount of money involved, but I don't know if they'll be here. So that's something, again, that's for another day. I don't think they'll be able to come over this summer necessarily. And that's not just the COVID thing, that's possibly to do with rules and regs, and again, visas and work permits and all that kind of stuff. That's a bit of a pain in the neck, quite frankly. But as I've maybe touched on anyway, with the festival this year, it may not happen in June. I'm going to make a decision in February. That's the kind of plan to decide what I'm going to do this summer. Worst case scenario is I'll push it back a little bit. And that's where I think I'll be, whether I push it back to maybe August, possibly even September. Obviously keeping an eye on what other events are doing, because I don't want two things on the same time. And although it would sound daft if I'm in Scotland and somebody's in Manchester, most of the smaller events tend to deal with a kind of core of similar bands. You know, whether it's the Scarlet Rebels, Revival Black, you know, whoever it's going to be, there's these bands that are all kind of touring the smaller festival circuit, if you like. So I need to be aware of who's doing what and when, and that we don't all stand in each other's feet, if you like. Try and keep a bit of distance between them, because they're not cheap things to do if you're a punter. I don't like the word, but you know, if you're buying a ticket for an event like ours, whether it's 50, 60 quid, that's not what it costs you. You know, by the time you come here and think about what you're going to eat and what you're going to drink and all that kind of stuff, and then buy merch, and a lot of the people that come to our gigs buy lots of merch, they're spending hundreds and hundreds of pounds. But people know that, and they prepare for it, and they set that to a budget, I think, for certain times of the year. So I'll just need to try and work best way I can to try and fit it into some sort of time scale through the summer. I'd love to say end of June. Being honest, I don't think so. But there will be something on.
To be honest with you, Dave, I'm just glad to hear that you're not just doing we're cancelling it, we'll do it in 2022, because I think, whilst I can understand why people would be tempted to do that, I think that the danger is that if you do that and you go 2-3 years, people forget the brand, they forget the name, they forget the joy they had at it. And it's almost like starting from scratch again. So I'm just glad that you're even thinking about moving it back, if that's the case. That's much better to me than hearing you say the words, "Oh no, I'm just going to sack it off until 2022."
To be honest, and I'm being honest here, I think if I sacked it this year, I don't think it would be on again. I think that would be the end of it for me. you know, I've touched on the fact that I think I've got good organisational skills, and that's fine. Maybe I think I have, maybe other people think I don't, but I believe I have, and I like to be busy. I say the past 6, 7, 8 months, yeah, I'm in here in this little kind of studio thing that I've got attached to the house, and I'm back in working about with music and little projects just to keep me sane. Because although I'm fortunate living in the country, I can go out for a walk, I can get outside, and I know a lot of people are not in that position in the kind of lockdown thing. But I'm 2 minutes and I'm into a field or a woodland, which is fantastic. But I need to be doing something. And if I'm not organising a festival, which I'm not at the moment, although it's kind of pre-organised from last year anyway, I would go nuts. And I just think if I couldn't do something this year, I would have to seriously consider putting my energy into something else, whatever that would be. I don't know. I have kind of offered my services online to people that want some advice or some help in management or whatever, but nobody took me up on it. So that's fine.
I think the problem with that is, Dave, is that people forget that you've got transferable skills, and they draw lines, and it's like, well, how can you do that if you're doing this? They don't realise that like, hopefully people listening to this and watching this will have heard the fact that you actually started off booking gigs for your band and you have done it before. So maybe that's the eye opener people need, because that's what this is all about, mate. This is about you sharing your experiences, etc. So let's take it to this young band out there, like your first band. They're practicing in somebody's back bedroom or in the garage or something. What's the things you would tell them to focus on above anything else to give them the best possible chance of getting onto any of your festivals or any of your gigs?
I think that it's kind of maybe again a cliche, but if you're going to do something, do it properly. So invest. I mean, you're going to have to spend money whether you like it or not, but invest whatever money you have into doing something the best possible way. I get literally hundreds of emails over a year, and leading up to the festival, I sometimes get hundreds in a week. People wanting to play the festival, and I'd love to show you them, but I wouldn't, because I could block the names of the bands out. The vast majority of things I get are atrocious. They're like one-liners, like "check us out, mate." I think, what does that mean? You know, really, really awful stuff. So I think all I always say is kind of hone your craft a little bit. Be confident in your songs. I still go by songs. I still believe a good song is the hook, the killer. It's the bit that brings me in. So work on your songs to get them sort of finely honed, finely crafted, and spend a little bit of money getting them recorded properly. Now you can do it again. I've got a setup here. Okay, rich coming from me, sitting on my Marshall stack thing behind me, and all this kind of kit I've got here. But you can still, I know what my son can produce with a laptop and you know, an audio interface thing and a free downloader Reaper or whatever he'll use. And so spend a bit of time and record things properly and concentrate on doing one or two things really well. That then becomes part of call it a press kit or whatever you want to do it. Get a decent picture. It doesn't need to be professional. You can do it on a phone. Anybody can take a good picture and get a good bit of information about the band. Where are you from? How long have you been together? Where have you played? That kind of thing. Just put a package together that looks the part and send it to people. I always listen to everything I get, and honestly, hand on heart, a lot of the stuff I get is absolutely dreadful. But there is some stuff that's fantastic. Now that doesn't mean the fantastic one is necessarily better than some of the dreadful stuff. It sticks with you more because you think, well, that's done properly, the time and effort. It's almost like they care more because they put the time and effort in. That would attract me to go and see the band. And invariably, if something crosses my path that I like, my next question would be, when can I see you or where are you playing? Now, some bands will say something like, well, we don't really do much. We've only played in the local pub or whatever else. And that's why I did what I did last year in Blackpool. I did a showcase. Now, albeit some of the bands were well known, but there was a few bands there I'd never seen in my life before. I said, well, here's what to do. I've got a gig in Blackpool. You're in Manchester. I'll give you 75 quid to cover your fuel. Come along, play for 40 minutes or 30 minutes and let me see you. And I think out of the 10 bands we had on that weekend, I think I booked 9 of them for the fest. I knew some were going to be good anyway, but there's some I'd never seen in my life and hardly ever played a gig. And you could tell, but you can see the potential there. And they're fine. You know, they might go on a Sunday morning at 11 o'clock or whatever it's going to be, but there'll still be people there to watch them. And that gets them that little bit sort of step up, if you like, to say, well, we've played a festival, it was a bigger stage, it was a professional setup, and people will see them. So I just think, do what you do well, and keep it, as I say, small and focused, and do it properly. I think that's the key thing to me, because there's no point in doing a 10-track EP if it's really, really mushy and be recorded and the presentation's not right. It's not everything, but try and be as professional as you can. And if you're not sure, and this goes back to what I've said about my early days of booking bands and management sort of stuff, I'll happily look at it for you if you're willing to take, as in, we're not bothered about the festival, but what do you think of our presentation here? As long as you take the criticism the right way. If I say, well, this is, in my opinion, right, and that's wrong, take that away and develop it if you want. I'll give you that for free. I don't mind. I've got plenty of time on my hands between now and wherever. I don't think I'll be working full time till midsummer. So I'm sitting at home here with lots of time to listen to music and advise.
Everything you said there is spot on, because obviously in the position I'm in, you know, the different hats I've got, I get it all the time as well. And people contact me and it's like, yo mate, let's check us out. We'd like you to manage us. And I'm like, mate, you haven't done a gig yet. You've got one song out which isn't even mixed properly, etc., etc. So, you know, what you said is absolutely spot on. You've got to present something. Put yourself in the place of the person you're sending it to. Think about them. What are they going to think of this? What, you know, take your blinkers off, fans. Take the blinkers off about how good you are. You may be brilliant, but you may not be as good as you think you are. You know, but the point is how are you going to present this that people are going to go, that's for me, that's brilliant. You know,
Yeah.
And you need to be bloody honest with yourself. And I think you often the fact that you will do that for people. You know, you will listen to it. You will go back to them with, you know, any criticism, but it'll be constructive. But they need to take that in the way it's meant. So, bands, if you're watching this, then there's your man. He's the man that's booking bands. So if he's telling you something, it's definitely right.
Can I just add to that? The other thing that really frustrates me is I think also there's people out there that see the word festival or band management or whatever, send you stuff, and I'm sure you'll probably be in the same position. The amount of stuff I get, and I just think, have you actually looked at Wildfire Festival? Have you looked at the previous lineups? Have you looked at the music we've got? I mean, I'm thinking, where is this coming from? And I don't even mean like pop indie music. I'm talking really obscure jazz stuff, whatever. You like, what are you seeing when you look at our website, which at the moment is a bit of a mess, to be honest? But you know, what are you seeing when you look at videos from Wildfire and you see whether it's a Saxon or an Inglorious or you know, whoever, or you know, they're obviously just blanket sending stuff out. That you can tell it's you know, it's just been sent out. That generally for me just gets a delete, end of, sorry, because it's not even in the right kind of ballpark for where we are with music.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that goes on.
And that's a good point. And no matter how good a band you are, if you're a hip hop artist and you're absolutely fantastic, and you're sending something to me, which is quite clearly I'm rock, country rock, but you know, best will in the world, I'm not going to be impressed by it. In fact, you're going to hack me off by sending it because you haven't done due diligence. You haven't checked.
Well, that's the word. That's the word. Due diligence. Yeah. Absolutely. Have a look at who you're dealing with here and think this isn't for me. Because a lot of stuff is not for me. I used to tell people, look, I'm sorry, it's not for me, and then they come back to you and you think, I don't want correspondence here, so just go, I'm sorry, just delete it. Just nasty, but just delete it. I'm not interested. If you're rocky and there's something there, I will write back to people and go, there's something here, I need to see a wee bit more. I want to try and come and see you play. And if you can't play, that's my plan. Actually, I set up a new limited company. Great timing this by me, last February, to start running events across the country. I've got 3 or 4 venues I can use now, from the south of England to the north of Scotland, on showcases maybe every couple of months, and start to bring bands in, get a focus, and have a look at them. That's still a plan, but that'll probably be 2022, I would guess. Yeah, it'll be another year away. But I've got connections with venues where I know we can put on good shows, and that's what I want to do. People send me stuff, I'm quite happy to give them that gig. If you like their first gig, that's fine, I'll do that. And we'll see what they like. On the basis there'll probably be 9 or 10 bands on the bill. And the last 3 I know, bands I'll book anyway, they'll be up there, you know, they'll be well worth coming out for. The rest of the bands just get a chance to play. That's kind of what I want to try and keep it all. but not just now. Can't.
So I think that wraps it up quite nicely, to be perfectly honest, Dave. I think I couldn't ask for much more than that, to be perfectly honest. However, I do have one question left for you.
Okay.
I'm a Scouser. I always ask for more, mate. So can you give us your links? How do we get in touch with, like, Dave Ritchie? If someone wants some advice from yourself, what's the best way to get in touch with you? What's the best way for the bands to check out, Wildfire? Give us your links, mate.
Right, the best way, actually, I mean, we've got Wildfire events and we've got Wildfire Festival and blah, blah, blah. Forget all that. My email address, nice and simple, it's Dave Ritchie, all one word. Ritchie spelled with a T. I'm assuming you'll put a link onto this somewhere.
Yeah,
but
we'll put
Dave, down here somewhere. Yeah, it's daveritchie@sky.com. That's it. That's my email address. You send that, it doesn't go to spam. It doesn't get lost. It goes directly to me. That's the best place to get in touch with me. And if you want to get an indication of what Wildfire is like, we have our own YouTube channel, which is called Wildfire TV, but there's not much on that because we have plans to develop that as a kind of an online, it was going to be kind of live recorded music, but done in a studio type thing as a kind of session. We did one with Mason Hill 2 or 3 years ago now, and it's not had a chance to develop. So Wildfire TV's got some stuff from the festival, but if you go onto YouTube and type in Wildfire Festival Scotland, there's loads of videos in there that people have done on phones and some professional equipment. That will give you an idea what the event looks like, sounds like, and the type of music we have. Which is, it's rock based. I still say it's quite mixed. We have got some light stuff, some really heavy stuff. So we go from the melodic country rock to real growly metal at times, and that's again fine. 60 bands, we're going to mix it up because there's a mixed crowd. We can't please everybody, so we can mix it up over the weekend. But that'll give you an idea of what it's like. That was my email address that I gave you. That's the way to get in touch with me. I'm on Facebook, but I wouldn't bother with that one because I don't really use Facebook much nowadays. I'm also on Twitter and it's Dave Lee Ritchie, as in Dave Lee Roth. Obviously, I'm not Dave Lee Roth, but I am at Dave Lee Ritchie. That's me, and that's where you'll get me on Twitter. And I've got a DM there. You can send me messages directly through Twitter, as bands do. I've no issue with that, and I'll always try and respond to them if I can. It doesn't take long to just write a couple of lines back and say, thanks, I've got this, or this is what I want, or this is what I need. So that's the way to get me, through Twitter, through my email address. I'm not giving you my mobile phone number, but that's the way.
I've got it anyway, Dave. I've got
it. What I'll do, Dave, it's Sam, mate. What I'll do is I'll put all the links down below. So, guys, if you're watching this and you want a bit of advice from Dave, reach out to him, send him an email, get him on Twitter, all down below. So click the links down below, get in touch. John, it's over to you, mate.
Well, just like to thank Dave for the time you've given us there, mate. It's been really, really good, really insightful, and I think it will help anybody that's watched this, mate.
Thank you. Honestly, I appreciate it for both of you and John. Honestly, it's been a pleasure. It's the best thing I've done the most fun I've had for weeks because I've been stuck in the house. Thank you.
Yeah,
it's been really good. Been good to talk music again. It's been fantastic. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
That's cool.
Thanks.
So, ladies and gentlemen, until the next time, you know what to do. Hit that cowbell, subscribe.